idea of seeing someone with a disability succeed in a career as challenging as being a doctor, it gave me hope, and I thought if it did this for me, perhaps it would touch others in the same way. So I championed an American adaptation of it, and this was the hit show, The Good Doctor. They really know how to go after your emotions and just make you feel. Like they swing from humor to sadness to suspense. So what's next? Where should we be looking for the next big hit?
이 프로그램은 자연의 건강을 전하는 우메켄 제공입니다.
As a producer who's worked in Hollywood for over 20 years, I often find myself wondering why something works. What makes it a hit? It feels like there's this magical spark sometimes when you watch a show, something you've never seen before, and it just works. We could analyze hits like Squid Game and Parasite over and over and try to figure out why have they become such big international hits? What is it? Many people have tried and are still trying to predict what will work using data, using what has worked in the past, and trying to predict trends in the future. These tools can help, but at the end of the day, nobody really knows. So, absent a magical AI to tell me what projects have the most probability of success, today I'm going to tell you a little bit about the projects I'm working on and why I chose to work on them. So I've always been a curious person, and the more time I spend producing shows, the more I rely on my curiosity. Curiosity is sometimes conflated with finding something interesting, but I hate the word interesting. It's boring. Curiosity is very different. Being curious to me means you want to learn more. It inspires you to want to understand more. It sparks your imagination and makes you wonder why. When I was a little girl, my favorite movie growing up was Annie. I loved that movie so much that as a treat, my family would throw Annie nights where I would dress up and even make my dog Buttons wear a red bow. I would call my dad Daddy Warbucks, you can see the resemblance, and we would listen to all the music from the show over and over again. Sorry, Mom and Dad. What I didn't realize at the time was why I connected to that movie. As I got older, I wondered why had this movie meant so much to me? What had caused me to form this mysterious thing we call connection? What's that feeling, and what about Annie specifically had made me feel so good? You see, growing up in Indiana, all my friends at school had silky, straight, gorgeous hair. So even, my American Girl dolls, Barbies, My Little Pony, they all had long, straight hair, and I had always been self-conscious about my short, very curly hair. But you know who else had my type of hair? Annie. I connected to that movie because of something as simple as hair. Watching Annie and seeing another little girl with short, curly hair made me feel seen. I thought that's probably an important part of what makes something work. So I kept that in the back of my mind. And who else could be represented in the media who had traditionally been left out? And who could I lend my joy of seeing myself through Annie? Well, in America, there's no shortage of underrepresentation, but the rule of thumb was those voices couldn't make up enough of an audience to support a series. And I wasn't satisfied with those reasons. I was curious, why didn't we have more and better representation? So eventually, I came across this unique Korean drama. The show had everything. It was witty, funny, yet heartfelt at the same time. And it had this wholly underrepresented voice in its center, a young doctor with autism. The show really resonated with me because my son, who was only a few years old, he was diagnosed with a severe visual impairment. And when he was born, he was completely blind. The idea of seeing someone with a disability succeed in a career as challenging as being a doctor, it gave me hope. And I thought if it did this for me, perhaps it would touch others in the same way. So I championed an American adaptation of it, and this was the hit show, The Good Doctor. In the time that I worked on it, the adaptation and the characters, they really took on a life of their own. And it went on to win the Humanitas Prize, which is a highly sought after award that is given to film and TV writers whose work really explores the human condition. What does that mean? The human condition, it's such a broad term. But I like to think it means that we succeeded in telling a powerful story that makes people feel the same way I felt in my living room watching Annie. So recently I packaged another show based on a Korean format, and it's currently in production and set to air in February on ABC. This is The Company You Keep, based on the format My Fellow Citizens. It's about a white-collar criminal, and we got Milo Ventimiglia, who had just come off of This Is Us. He's playing Charlie, a con artist who meets and falls in love with Emma, a CIA officer played by the awesome Catherine Henne Kim. I wanted to make sure the roots of the Korean content that inspired it were apparent to anyone watching the show. So I pushed for making the CIA officer Korean. To further make the series as authentic as possible, I approached John Chu's company. With the success of Crazy Rich Asians, his company produces projects with meaningful Asian representation. The second part about being curious to me is I love to be told something I don't already know. Many people don't like not knowing something. They see it as a weakness. But to me, it means there's an opportunity to learn. That's what brought me to LA in the first place. I went where my curiosity led me. I knew I wanted to do something creative, but didn't know anyone in entertainment. Growing up in Indiana, it never even occurred to me that being a TV producer could be a remote possibility. But I was curious, so I pursued my dream and went out to LA without knowing anyone. My parents, they gave me 2 weeks to find a job and a place to live. And I had a list of everyone I knew in Indianapolis who had a connection in LA. Second cousins, ex-boyfriends, friends, people who I met through school who told me to look them up when I got to LA. I did. And after a few weeks and many, many cold calls, I got my big interview. It was with a production company to be a receptionist. I got out my Thomas guide and printed directions on MapQuest because there were no iPhones at the time, and I made it to my interview. I got hired that day. I was so excited. I called my family back in Indianapolis and told them this fantastic news. Now I could move out to LA because I had a real job working in entertainment. So my dad and my sister and I, we drove cross country in the Honda CR-V. I got to my job and the woman who hired me said, "Oh, you are mistaken. You don't have this job. We're going to audition you for 2 weeks and then someone else, and then we'll decide who we want to hire." Okay. So long story short, I did not get the job, but I didn't give up, and eventually I got a call back from the ICM HR department where I officially got my start, and I landed in the Fable ICM mailroom. I always tell people the agency mailroom is it's just the best place to start in Hollywood. You're really like the eyes and ears of everything. You've learned so much. So after that, I took a job working for the head of reality at UPN, working on America's Next Top Model. Later, I worked for the Tannenbaum Company, where we did 2.5 Men. After that, I worked at Fremantle, the producer of American Idol and America's Got Talent. And then I decided I truly love scripted storytelling, and that's what I wanted to focus on. And so I worked at Gross Entertainment, where we had a deal at ABC, and then helped found 3AD, Daniel Day Kim's production company. So it sounds pretty straightforward saying it now, but competition is incredibly fierce when a big part of the culture is building relationships. It's taken me 20 years, starting from the mailroom, to build relationships with people who now work at platforms, production companies, or studios that I can now go to with an idea to collaborate on. You can see it's harder now than ever to sell a show. First, a lot of the feature film business has moved to the streamers. And all film, all TV, past and present, is available anytime, anywhere. Not to mention all the content that's available from all over the world. There are more choices than we have ever seen. More shows are competing for our attention, more streaming services. Oh, and that's before we even factor in video games, TikTok, YouTube, Roblox, social media. The reality is now, even A-list talent are having a hard time selling shows. But the good news is there are very few actors now that won't do television. That's very different from 15 years ago when TV wasn't considered as prestigious as feature films. So, given all the competition, I think a lot about how to grab a viewer's attention when they have a million choices. How can we package an idea or a person's true life story that most people don't know anything about? And how do we show it in a way that makes the audience care and curious to learn more? I can't speak for everyone. I can only pursue what makes me curious. Like when I made a documentary about my mom, who later in life decided she was going to be a ventriloquist. As you can imagine, I was very curious about what motivated her and others to be drawn to this ancient art form. What we found while doing the documentary is that a lot of these performers, like my mom, were incredibly shy. Here she is with her puppets. And ventriloquism was almost like a type of therapy where she could say whatever she wanted through the puppets. So another example of following my curiosity is a show called Freestyle. So here's what happened. I saw a Facebook post about a writer friend getting dressed for an award show. I clicked on the link and saw the story of Rich Fresh, an incredible designer with pink hair and a bright colored suit. So it turns out he risked everything to bring his style of fashion from Memphis to LA. So I partnered with Trevor Noah's company and we sold the show to FX. Right now, I'm thinking a lot about my daughter and her friends. She's currently in 4th grade and dealing with lots of cliques and drama that pop up in school at that age. And I'm so curious about the emotions that she's feeling and how that could potentially be represented on screen to help her and other little girls feel seen. This is what I think is so amazing about Korean shows. They are so creative and they feature underdogs from all types of people and all walks of life. After The Good Doctor and The Company You Keep, I found many Korean shows that inspired my curiosity. Like in Kairos, how would I react to a time-space distortion? What would happen if I found out I could communicate with someone a month in the past, right before their daughter was about to be kidnapped? Or in Welcome to Life, what if I woke up one day and found myself in an alternate reality married to a different person? But perhaps the biggest reason for the popularity of K-dramas among American audiences is how they make us feel. K-dramas are so addictive. They are so fun to watch, and once they hook you, you can't stop. They really know how to go after your emotions and just make you feel. Like they swing from humor to sadness to suspense. So what's next? Where should we be looking for the next big hit? I'm excited to find out. And one thought I've had is we know Korean shows and movies, they've had such a huge global impact, and I can't wait to see the stories in Korean books and webtoons. I think with the help of AI, as we continue to translate books and webtoons faster and cheaper, the possibilities are endless for book adaptations. So in closing, the mathematical, data-driven side and algorithm side of the business is always looking for a way to predict and secure hit shows. But that approach, at least for me, is a guide to creating imitations of previous hits rather than innovating future ones. They feel boring. We've seen it before. And if we know anything, it's that doing what worked yesterday rarely works today. Last week, I took my daughter to see Annie. On the way home, she said, "Mom, will you curl my hair tomorrow just like Annie's?" How's that for making a connection? So I invite you to follow your curiosity. Find what it is that makes a story connect with you, makes you feel seen, and share that with the world. The chances are there are many other people who feel the same, and that will lead to stories that translate through all generations. What are you curious about? Thank you.
이 프로그램은 자연의 건강을 전하는 우메켄 제공이었습니다.